All right. Welcome, everyone. I'm Niki Rabren, Executive Director for Professional Services and Cybersecurity at Tier 4 Group. Thank you for joining us on this first webinar in our series called Women Leading Change. Over the next several weeks, we're going to be talking about a variety of topics that are relevant to all of us, female and male, about those times that tend to disrupt our lives the most. Those times that test us, that force us to look at our circumstances in a different light and potentially make bold decisions about how we move forward. Our topic today is a topic that I think that we're probably all in touch with right now, and that is on motivating employees through uncertainty. I'm joined by Betsy Robinson, President and CEO of Tier 4 Group, Whitney Nicholson, Vice President of Planning and Execution at Equifax, and Vicki Bodman, Senior Director of Engineering at Mailchimp. Friends, welcome to this first webinar. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this journey.
Absolutely.
And we are joining you from the first thing and the most obvious thing that's changed for all of us, and that is our lovely home offices in whatever shape or form that might take for us. Some of us are a little fancier, Miss Nicholson, than others, as she's got her lovely orchid on her desk. I love it. Why don't we just jump right into the conversation? And what I'd love for each of you to do is provide a little bit of background about yourselves. Tell us what groups you're leading, how many folks that might be, but also include your personal philosophy on managing change, because I have a hunch that your personal philosophy in terms of how you look at change has a lot to do with how you're leading other people through it right now. So Vicki, why don't we start with you?
Awesome. Hi, I'm Vicki Bodman. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a Senior Director at Mailchimp, where I have responsibility for most of our operational functions. So some compute, storage, monitoring, databases, email deliverability, and project management, and lots of other things. I have about 115 people in my organization. My approach to managing change has evolved over the years, as you can imagine. I used to fear and fight change. Like, I liked how things were, so why would I change it? And then a wise woman reminded me that the world was changing around me, and I could embrace and manage change, or I could let it happen to me and hope for the best. And while it was a light bulb moment, I'm sad to say that it wasn't a light switch change in my attitude. It took some more hard lessons for me to get where I am now, which is where I welcome change, and I use it as a way to stay motivated and engaged and understand that there's always something to learn through hard changes.
That's excellent. Betsy, let's turn it over to you.
Yeah, so Betsy Robinson, CEO of Tier 4 Group. We have 3 divisions under the Tier 4 Group umbrella, which include talent, so IT recruiting and staffing, professional services, and cybersecurity. Overall, including consultants and internal employees, we have about 60 to 70 people that I'm responsible for in the organization. Personal philosophy on leading change is, like Vicki said, is kind of evolved over the years. And I think the more that you lead and manage through it personally, or go through it personally, if you're not a leader yet, the more your philosophy will change. But I'm a big fan of over communicating, and that goes to teams and to everyone around me. But you can focus on what you can control, and like Vicki said, you can see change as an opportunity, right? Some of the biggest opportunities that you can have come as a result of crisis and in uncertain times. So look for those opportunities. Stay engaged, be positive, and over communicate with those around you. That's my personal philosophy.
Oh, I love it. That's such good wisdom. So Wendy, what about you? Tell us a little about your background and your philosophy on change as well.
Okay, so I'm Whitney Nicholson. I am President of Planning and Execution for our Global Consumer Solutions Group at Equifax. So this is the group that, from a credit reporting perspective, so your annual credit reports, your freeze, your fraud, all the things that go with being a consumer, and looking at your credit reports and so how you're doing. Financially. So of course, always trying to help individuals live their financial best, Equifax plug. And so my team is basically an Agile PMO with some extra things there. So my team directly, I have about 63 people. We support about 400 people between Atlanta, Trivandrum, India, Dublin, Ireland, Ukraine, Kiev in Ukraine, as well as Denver here in the US. So, and Santiago, Chile. They'll kill me if I don't mention them as well. So a number of teams across multiple time zones, multiple countries. My team specifically, like I said, mostly Agile PMO. We do delivery management of our roadmap. We have Agile coaches that assist in, our teams in terms of being better Agilists as we work through our transformation. We do all the regulatory and compliance of reporting and support, PCI and all of that for our alliance is what we call them. And any other monthly reporting that results from our transformation or up to the board on how we're performing, how we're doing, working directly with our product team on the business side. So close collaboration with them as well. So that's kind of my world. In terms of change, I think I've always been a tinkerer and I love puzzles. So I'm always the person that does the puzzles on the outside and then work on the inside, right? Then figure out what else needs to happen. But in terms of leading change, my philosophy has been somewhat of what Betsy said. I want to look at how can I influence it on the other end. So when change happens and maybe not, what I decided to do, but it came to me, then I start thinking about how can I influence that and make it be more of what I want, right? I think you have an opportunity instead of getting wound up about the change. It's more about thinking what happens after. How do I influence this and how do I behave during it so that I'm not out of sorts and that I have a way or a mechanism to sort of move forward. And again, on the other side, be a part of that change and make it positive.
Wow, there's so much there. I can't wait to get into those topics because it's, you're kind of leading us into a lot of different areas we're going to discuss. But let's stay with you, Wendy, for just one second, because what I think is interesting about this particular time of change is obviously there's this global pandemic that's happening around us, and that's causing some of our businesses to react negatively, but not everybody's business is reacting negatively to this. And that is definitely a topic that we want to talk about today. So what about for you? Has your business slowed down? Has it picked up? What are you seeing from a business perspective right now at Equifax?
I honestly don't see any slowdown. I think we are busy as ever. We are continuing our 2020 roadmap from what we started at the end of the year and last year and moving forward to that. So we're kind of moving full steam ahead. I think, we've had a little bit of impact based on the CARES Act and what we need to do in terms of providing free credit reporting to everyone on a weekly basis. But other than that, I mean, honestly, we've just moved full steam ahead and trying to make sure we are delivering as we committed to at the beginning of the year.
So you're saying you've added things to your plate, not necessarily detracted from it,
yes.
which is a source of stress in and of itself, but we'll touch on that. Yes. Vicki, I saw you nodding your head. Are you kind of feeling the same sense of business dynamic there?
Yeah, I think our business has picked up. I mean, our bread and butter is small businesses, and what we've seen are brick and mortar stores who maybe weren't online, quickly trying to get online so they can figure out how to save their businesses. We've seen our existing small businesses increase their marketing to accommodate for that foot traffic that's not there. So yeah, we've seen our business pick up.
Yeah, and I think that your customer base in terms of being able to pivot is certainly something that a lot of people share. And Betsy, you've got a little bit of a story there too as well in terms of, not every line of business that you support now is seeing some downtime. So tell us a little bit about what you've been facing.
Yeah, so naturally in the talent space, it kind of depends, right, on the industries that we support. So we've had customers who've unfortunately had to furlough, talent, furlough contractors, lay people off. I mean, just listen to the news one night and it's who's laid off, who's been laid off from what company. So the talent business has slowed, but we do have other customers that we support, MSPs, cloud solution providers who are just booming, right? Because they need more support now than ever to support their customers. But our professional services and in particularly our cybersecurity operations business, has greatly increased as a demand of remote workforce and securing the remote workforce and continuing to look at projects like IT spend audits and assessments and what's the current state and what could the future state be out of this opportunity. So it's a case of when one business is kind of going down, the other one certainly has some opportunities. So we launched a new product actually that wasn't supposed to be on our roadmap until the fall, which was Tier 4 Secure, and it's a small business designed to be an SMB type of product, but it's a machine-based threat detection and response service that protects our clients and business systems, malware and unauthorized access 24/7, 365. So we actually expedited that. Nikki, you were a big part of that, but we had a team that worked really hard to expedite that because we knew customers were going to need this. And in fact, in less than 30 days, we have POCs and paying customers, and it's been well received and it's paying off. But that was something that wasn't supposed to be scheduled until fall that we've taken, and we've pushed that up to meet the timelines and to help our customers.
Yeah, and I think that when you have opportunity or when things kind of feel like they're falling apart, particularly when the news, we've all talked about it. You watch the news and it's, Armageddon is upon us. But that's not necessarily the case for everybody. So I think people tend to kind of seek out those opportunities and they kind of dive into an instance where they can make a difference. But it's across the board. So one of the things I want to talk about is how you're helping employees manage stress levels, right? So uncertainty can bring emotional stress. This particular issue is not just about job stress, it's also about health stress, the health of our neighbors and the people we go to church with and our family members. And so there's kind of a lot wrapped up in this current time we're living in. Wendy, let's start with you. How are your teams feeling these days, particularly because you've got you've got a global team and this is a global issue that we're facing. How are you guys feeling, and are you distracted or focused? What's the pulse like for you?
I think it's two things. I think we are at some points very focused. If you think about engineering and being able to develop and work from home and just heads down, I don't have to be in traffic, I don't have to do these things, it's great, right? Like we've seen increases in our productivity, in the velocity, because we're an agile shop in terms of what, how we're performing. On the other side, we do try to think about the human side of people. And there are, folks that have small children or elderly parents or what have you. And you're at a place where you are having to bring your whole self to work, right? There is babies crying, there are dogs barking, there are lots of things that are happening that I think people are being a bit more forgiving. And so for my team, we try to connect weekly. So there are some people that are singles, that are individuals who it's just them at home, and trying to make sure that we have connectivity to all the folks that are there. And we've started doing things. We'll have virtual happy hours. We'll have, we played a virtual scavenger hunt with the family. So we brought the kids in and then we would give them a thing to go find. And so we had a little contest. And then, just from a whole Equifax perspective, we have, living your best life during COVID sort of site, and it has everything on it from exercising to cooking to different things. And we try to make sure we have chat rooms where we can share. For example, one of our guys he taught his kids at home. So stay at home school, right? Homeschooled his kids. So he had tips for people who weren't accustomed to having kids at home and being able to be that teacher as well as the parent and the caregiver across the board. So I think that was probably the biggest impact that I've seen from that perspective is just being that all around caregiver and parent, and also working in the timing and trying to make sure we acknowledge that there are times like during lunch, people need to sort of maybe reset and feed their kids and then start back the rest of the afternoon. So we're trying a lot of different things. We do have two meditation sessions per week that anybody in the company can join, and it's guided by one of our, transformation leaders, and we basically have that 30-minute sort of Zoom, where we use Google Hangouts. We have a session where you can join, and it's a meditation session, once on Mondays and once on Fridays.
I love that so much. It's not just for Google anymore. Meditation has come to all of us, wherever we happen to be. That's really cool. That's really cool. Vicki, what about you guys? What are some of the different things? Well, first of all, how are your teams doing, right? Let's check in on that. And then what are you doing that's maybe a little bit different than you haven't done before?
I think it's fair to say that we've all gone different parts of stresses. Some people have settled in, working from home. Some people are still, and as Wendy said, they're at home. They're craving human interaction, and then, we have the kids, the dogs, everything going on. So I think it's fair to say we're distracted. What we're trying to do is extend the grace that Wendy mentioned, and look, if if you need to step away, you need to step away. I think as leaders, what we are attempting to do is model that behavior and model it a little more publicly. We've got Slack channels where we're trying to use a little more openly to say, hey, I got to step away for 15 minutes to go take care of my kid. I need to go, I'm going to be gone for an hour because I need to go help with algebra. Or I need to go check on my mom or whatever it is, so that it's not just us saying you should take time for yourself, but us showing that we are doing it and we do expect you to do it. I've always tried to ask our people to take themselves and their family first. And I think it's really more important now than ever. Wendy mentioned bringing your whole self to work. You can't do that if you're way overstressed, or that you have a child sitting 20 feet away that's struggling with algebra. You just can't. You need to pause. You need to go take care of that. So some of the things, we're doing a lot of the things that Wendy mentioned, the happy hours, the online games. The engineering leadership team has, when we started moving from working from home, we started doing a daily update in our engineering channel from our engineering leadership. And it started as a way to make sure people weren't missing new policy changes, which offices were working from home, who was doing what. But it's rolled into now also letting our leadership team talk about how this is affecting us. And we've had some really great principal engineers alongside with us, talking about how they work from home for a living, and this is impacting them. And I think it's really connected with our engineers and with the rest of our staff that this is hard. This is not work from home. But this is there's so much else going on. So that's one thing, and we've gotten really great feedback on it. That it's really great to hear from our leaders. So we scaled it back. We're doing it 3 times a week now because when we first started, things are changing so fast. But it's something we've decided we'll keep doing even after we get out of this. It's a way to connect. Mailchimp has instituted some different policies also to try to help folks. We've added additional sick days. We've added a 6-week parental leave, or really caregiver leave. That's hard to say. Where folks can break that up in any way they need to, but if their care has been suspended, family or kids or whatever, it's 6 weeks of time that they can take off. We've had folks taking a week off. We've had folks, working, taking 2 hours a day. We've had folks taking every Tuesday, Thursday, but a way that they can step away and recognize that they have to, you have to take care of your family, right? You just have to.
So that's pretty progressive though, because did you guys have parental leave? What did your parental leave look like before? And what was the discussion like saying, yeah, let's call it caregiver, because it's not just new baby mode, right? It's really life family, mode.
Yeah, so this is actually in addition to a new parent mode. But it's 6 weeks for caregivers. That the talk was when daycare started closing, and if you've got a baby or a toddler, what are you going to do? You can't work. You just can't. You can't focus it. I'm lucky. My kids are older, so it's a little easier. But that was part of the discussion. Is how, if we have folks who can't work, what are we going to do with them? The company's in a good spot. We don't need to make them take unpaid leave. There isn't any need to. And if we want our teams to be better, we need our whole teams there. And you can't be there wholly if you're worried about who's taking care of your kid, or who's taking care of your mom, right? So that's really where it's centered from. Niki was how do we take care of our employees?
Yeah, no, that's incredible. What a great example for everyone out there listening, for a model to follow. Betsy, you have salespeople and you've got recruiters on your teams, and that is a little I think, of an interesting dynamic, especially for those that haven't, lived through a time like this before. I mean, let's be honest, nobody's lived through anything like this now, but there's 9/11 and there's the financial crisis of 2008. And so I'm curious, when you're in sales, your income is dependent on all of your clients' businesses continuing to thrive. And as that starts to fall off, what are some unique things that you've been saying to your teams, motivating your teams around? Because I know that there are a lot of salespeople that are on this call that are trying to, I think that's one community that has certainly sought out ways to rally themselves mentally. So what are you saying to your teams?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, at the beginning of each year, our Tier 4 group team chooses a word of the year, and we kind of develop a theme around that. So in January, obviously before we could have predicted anything like this, our word of the year was cultivate. And that's not only cultivating relationships with each other, but with our customers, with our candidates, our consultants. So I keep kind of coming back to the word cultivate and how important it is, both for short term, but also for the long term, and just reaching out. And our customers depend on us, right? And so do our consultants. So reaching out and how are they doing? How are your teammates doing, right? And that helps everybody support each other and helps us support our customers. But you also have to be flexible and you have to be adaptable and you have to look for new ways to help customers solve problems, right? We have a number of tools in our tool belt here at Tier 4 and with our sister company, Tier 4 Advisors. So, how can we help them in a new and different way that we, weren't helping them before, and listening to them and coming up with solutions. And then creating small wins, right? Whereas you might have been looking at a quarter or a year in terms of goals, I mean, break it down to the day or to the hour or to the week. So that's definitely something that we've been trying to live out, and creating those small wins. And, that helps people stay positive, it helps them stay engaged, and it helps them not live in that fear and uncertainty, right? And live in that area that you can't control. So you can control how you react to something, you can control your output. And yes, we might have to be more flexible now than ever, but there are still a lot of things in your control that that you can do to help your customers.
Yeah, I heard some great wisdom from kind of a sales mentor who said, okay, take January through April and just like wad it up, throw it away. It is May through December, right? And start small. Like it's May, June, July, which is not really a regular quarter that anybody thinks about, but small chunks, kind of focus on what you can control and keep moving from there. But I got to give you credit because you did something that was so cool and creative. Tell us about the motivational inspiration that you sent us one evening, and you don't have to talk about the technical glitches. It was awesome. This needs to be modeled too.
Yeah, so I stole this. I'll give Jake Sherrill some credit. But for those of you that are not familiar with Cameo, you can go on and request. I mean, there's various price points, and everybody from reality TV celebrities to athletes or whatnot. So I went on. We're Bravo-holics over here for the most part. So I got Captain Lee from the Bravo show Below Deck. And he made a motivational video for Tier 4 and for our company. So we sent that out to the teams and surprised them one day. And we've been doing other things, like randomly I'll send Care or Dunkin' Donuts or Krispy Kreme or whatever it might be to someone's house and surprise them that day. But app, if that's something that's not in your repertoire, steal that and use it.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was really, really sweet. So I want to make a quick note to say if anyone watching has questions that they want to send in. I did get a couple before we started, but now is the time to go ahead and enter in your questions in the chat feature, and we'll continue talking as you guys are sending questions in. So I want to shift the conversation to communication. And I think, Betsy, you talked about how important it is to be transparent and to over communicate and really talk to people. And you've been so great through all of this with that. you know, as you've managed other crises before, Vicki, I'll throw this question to you because we had a conversation about this. Does this feel different? Like, are you having to communicate in a little bit different, way than maybe you had to in after 9/11 or even after 2008?
I see similarities and I see differences. This feels really similar and we communicate similar because it's a situation that we can't control. Similarly to 9/11, many of us aren't personally affected, yet the entire event is affecting us deeply. So thinking through like I might not be ill, but I'm still feeling the effects of this entire event. It messes with your sense of safety and your sense of well-being. It's just bleh. I feel like it's engaged our fight or flight, which definitely 9/11 did. But it feels different also in that we're dealing with two distinct issues, right? We have this virus that we have no idea when it's going to subside or when we're going to have a good way to deal with it. And then we have this financial hit that many people didn't see coming and they aren't in a position to claw out of. So I look at it and it's two different things. So while it's very similar, very different because I think it's hitting us in different ways. And I think we could easily have our souls crushed by this event. Yeah. And this is why having effective leaders, in my opinion, are so important to help people stay focused and take care of what needs to be taken care of.
Yeah, absolutely. Wendy, what about you? Are you feeling any sense of, this is different than previous, crises that we've lived and managed through?
I do. I think, when 9/11 happened, sort of what Vicki mentioned as well. My kids were younger and I just had this moment of sort of mama bear sort of flight, like I need to go get my kids. I don't know what's happening. How do I deal with this? And my initial reaction was I need to feel everybody close to me right here. And then, as the day progressed and we kind of watched and saw what happened and what we talked through, what we need to do. And, there's a lot going on that we couldn't, predict or understand. And I think with this virus, it's the same. I think there's a lot, medically that I'm not comfortable. And I know that everybody has all the right answers and whether you can get it once or twice or what that looks like. But I see impacts. I see impacts not only from me thinking about, from a health perspective, but also think about those who've been impacted from a work perspective, people who've been laid off, whose businesses are folding, whose businesses, aren't bringing in the revenue that they had before, and so they may be impacted. So I try to think about those folks too, whether that's my local restaurant that we try to frequent, and what that means for the staff and the people that are working there. So we try to do what we can there as well to help, whether that's donations or ordering or whatever that looks like. But I definitely feel it's different, and I don't have the edges of that puzzle, right? I don't have the edges to sort of figure out what else do I need to do in the middle. Right. I can do it day by day and then try to work through it that way. And then, like I said, I think we talk a little bit later maybe about being empathetic, but, just thinking about people and what they're feeling. If I think about my teams, I'm trying to make sure that, some people aren't as vocal. So how do I make sure that I'm, contacting or understanding how everybody feels or what's going on in their world that may or may not be helpful or harmful, whether they're sick or whether, something else is going on. Like I said, some people who are single and they're dying to get out, right? They're having lots of issues. So how do we sort of make sure that we're thinking about everybody as a whole, not just sort of maybe just the ones that everybody thinks may have it all together, or the ones that they all think that, maybe they are falling apart because they've got, a baby and 2 3-year-olds or whatever at home.
Yeah, no, those are such great points. Betsy, what about you? What are some things that you have been feeling like you've had to, reach inside yourself and communicate in a little bit different way than maybe you have previously?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, not to pile into what Wendy and Vicki said, but, being overly empathetic, right? And I saw a great article recently that I was reading that said supporter in chief, and that stuck with me, right? Because, you have to find a way to be a supporter in chief to those people that depend on you and that look to you for guidance. you have to be positive and project that confidence in your teams. And if you are feeling fear, which it's not an if, we are all feeling fear. We are all feeling. I haven't gotten to hug my mom, and
I know.
Hasn't gotten to hug my son or grandson since February, right? So we have teammates that have lost family members, and we have a girl on our team who's about to give birth to twins, and her family can't come to the hospital. And for a while she thought her husband might not be able to come to the hospital. So it's unimaginable things like that you just have to, in my opinion, kind of keep those fears to yourself or your loved ones, right? And as a leader, help support others through that, and not bring that to work, because your teams, your peers, and even the people that you report to will feel that fear and the craziness and all the chaos that comes with it. So you kind of have to be strong, not only for yourself but for others.
Yeah, although we'll have our own virtual happy hour and you can unload on me. Everybody, Vicki, you talked about it. Yeah, you said you've got executive teams that are saying, look, we have to be, you have to have some outlet to be able to say it's okay that you've got a lizard brain and to acknowledge it.
Yeah, I think it's a balance, right? You certainly don't want to come into a meeting and be, oh, woe is me, and this is terrible and life is horrible. But I do think it's important that everyone know, like, I heard somewhere, like, we're all in the same boat, and we're not all in the same boat, but we are all in the same storm, right? We're in the same storm. My boat might not have a hole in it, but yours might today, right? But tomorrow my boat might have a hole in it. I might have hit the rocks overnight. All these crazy analogies, but like, it's true. The situation changes. So I think we also need leaders who can be vulnerable and honest with their employees. But I do agree with Betsy, not bringing in, sort of that fear and the stress, but making sure people understand, like, this is a crazy time.
Yeah.
Everything you are feeling is normal. I don't know what you're feeling, but I guarantee you it's normal. And I guarantee other people are feeling the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is even a sense, I think of, and I read an article, it was an HBR article, early on, actually, where David Kessler, who is actually he writes about grief, and he's written some great books. Actually, when my dad died several years ago, it was like, that was how I got through that period of time. And he wrote about this time. He said, we're grieving because nobody saw this coming. And so whether it's, strategic plans or vacations that you were going to take, or, whatever milestone, high school graduation, we are all grieving something to a certain extent. And so I applaud all of you, actually, because you were doing some really unique and creative things, honorable things, whether it's policy, to be able to kind of lead everybody through this time. So kudos to you. Wendy, we have a question that has actually been on my mind from our audience. The question came in from the Q&A. But when you started talking about all of your teams that you're managing around the globe, right? So the question is, are there differences? Are there geo differences that you're seeing in terms of how people are reacting to this? And I think this is helpful for others that have global teams as well, right? South America, Western Europe, the US, like, what is that like for managing all of those different geos? And are there differences in how they're processing things?
Yeah, I think the difference for us is that once we got the, sort of the mandate to work from home, I mean, we operate in 24 countries. And so for my teams that we're working with, it depends on the local sort of what government you have there, right? So for example, in Dublin, they were they were ahead of us, right? In terms of when do we need to shut down? When do we need to start working from home? And I think that's been the saving grace in a way, that all of our folks are pretty much work from home. So for the most part, all of our team are technically non-essential, but we are working from home. So it helps tremendously by doing so. And now it's down to, what does the other side look like? When do you get there? And a lot of that does have to do with just local governments or what your country has decided on what that looks like. But as of now, we really have not had a major impact in any way. I think maybe our Santiago, Chile office may be a little bit ahead of our curve. But other than that, for the most part, everybody's been operating in the exact same way. And again, I haven't seen that. I think initially when we all were trying to determine when do we need to start working from home and when things were shutting down. As things started shutting down in Ireland pretty quickly, like all the daycares and all the schools, and they were ahead of us, was kind of more of that timing and angst at the beginning. And then everybody went home. Now everybody's a little, sort of having that cabin fever, being cooped up in various places. But I think other than that, everybody's been still working as normal.
So do you think that we're going to go back to the way that we worked before, where, work from home was everybody's scheduled, maybe there was one day a week? Or do you think our corporate way of working has changed for the foreseeable future? Vicki, I'll throw that to you.
My personal opinion, not representing that necessarily of my company, that's really not true. I do think it's changed. I mean, we are starting to have that conversation. We have in New York and Oakland and Seattle and Vancouver and London, and their main campuses in Atlanta have some full-time remote folks. But we're having that conversation right now. It's like, what does this look like? That's side by side of how do we reopen an office and when do we reopen offices? But yeah, I think it's changed. What I love about this, if I can pick up positive, is that I think those of us who work in offices are a lot more empathetic towards our remote friends. It's certainly been an eye-opener for me. I've not worked from home. I'm really easily distracted, so this is hard.
Yeah, it is hard. It is hard. Wendy, what about you? Do you think that you guys are setting a new norm?
I think that we are, and that, there are some who are like, I was born to work from home, right? And then there are some who are dying to have that social interaction. We do a great job, but we try to communicate. We get a bi-weekly emails from our CEO and our sort of COVID C-19 task force and leaders there. In terms of what we're doing and what does it look like for us, and in terms of any offices or what our plans might be as we move forward. We've done anonymous surveys just to get more feedback from our team members, just to see where they are, so that, some people you get down to an extrovert versus an introvert, right? Some people are very vocal and are ready to speak at any moment. And then there are others who are going to be quiet about it. So we try to make sure we're considering the feelings and thoughts of those who may not be as vocal. But I do, I've had some conversations about that too, as people are seeing that, you're able to be productive while you're working from home. And really, it's like, what does that look like? Are we really going to go back to, all of the real estate? Does it, in terms of the costs that's associated with it? Now, that might have a ripple effect in the real estate industry if we get to a place where, more companies are looking to, hey, you know what, this work from home thing wasn't so bad. Let me reduce my, my spend on real estate. And so I think those are the things that we'll probably be mulling over the next, year or so, in terms of what's most effective and what's the best mix for your companies. And as you move forward, what roles really need to be there. It's a little difficult. If you think about an agile team, you really want to be co-located. And if one team member is remote, pretty much that means everybody's remote, technically. That means that everybody's, so you have to, consider that as well. Like I said, right now we seem to be doing well in terms of working together and not really losing a bunch of steam working from home instead of being in the office.
Yeah, no, that's good. All right, I've got another question here from someone that wrote in, and I think the question really can go to Vicki and to Wendy. Even though you guys are experiencing great times and business uptick, for salespeople that are calling on customers or doing business with folks whose environments, budgets may be constrained, what's the right way for someone in sales to the right tone and the right demeanor to have in terms of communicating with that person? And obviously I'm paraphrasing the question a little bit. Vicki, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, it's interesting because we don't have phones, so I don't get phone calls, which is fine because I don't like talking on the phone. If my parents were listening, they would tell you that's not true when I was a teenager, but it is true now. But I'm getting a lot more emails. The tone's a little more aggressive, which I understand. What I would say if you're a salesperson listening is in your email, make sure that I know what company you're emailing you from. And make sure you tell me what problem you think you can solve for me. I get a lot of emails where I don't know what the company name is unless I go digging into the email address that's from. And I'm not sure what you do. I get these little blurbs. I'm like, you're asking for my time, which is incredibly valuable. And it's more valuable now when I'm trying to homeschool and work. So don't make me sleuth. Tell me who you are. Tell me what problem you think you can solve for me. And then I can decide whether we can connect or not. But if you make me sleuth, I'm honestly probably not going to do it.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Wendy, what would you see? What would you say? What are you seeing?
Well, I'm definitely seeing, probably just because of where we are in the market, and especially mine are probably more from a, recruiting kind of perspective of getting those calls. Not crazy. I think it's sort of in line with what we've seen before whenever I've had like an actual opening, but I have seen a slew of, like Vicki mentioned, people wanting your time, or I'm getting sort of a cold call. And I am like totally, it's sort of like I want to help people. I'm not going to help the world, but at the same time, like I said, I've got lots of friends or ex-coworkers or people that used to work on my teams who may have, been displaced during this time. And, so people who I can vouch for, if I think about it that way, I'm comfortable, vouching for someone who I feel comfortable, but I'm not going to vouch for someone who calls me, cold calls me, say, hey, we're connected on LinkedIn. Can you refer me for this job? I can't refer you because I really don't know your work. I can potentially put you into, connect with maybe who that person might be. But at the same time, that's sort of the thing to think about when you are trying to connect with someone and you want to use their time, or you're asking them for a favor. It really has to be effective and it has to make sense versus just sort of the off the cuff, I'm just going to start sending out blanket, can you refer me for a job kind of messaging.
Yeah.
So be a little bit more methodical, I would say, for people along those lines. So less of sales, but more of, recruiting and looking for positions.
Okay, that's interesting. That's so interesting because I do think that, we've talked about the sense of fear and the lizard brain, right, does kind of make people, maybe feel like they need to be a little bit more aggressive or pull some emotional strings that maybe they wouldn't be. But again, it's back to basics, right? Remember your fundamentals and you'll be fine.
Yes.
Well, we are very adamant about keeping to the time and respecting everyone's time. I want to say thank you very much. Somebody wrote in, this is the nicest comment, Angela. I'm going to read your comment. She says, I thank you all for creating the Zoom meeting. It was very informative and spoke to the different groups of citizens and how we are all affected by COVID-19, either directly or indirectly. We are all impacted. So I could not say that any better. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, Betsy. And I do want to make my own shameless plug. I'm going to share my screen quickly and announce to everyone that we will be hosting another webinar on Tuesday, June 2nd, also at 2 p.m. And we are going to be discussing mergers and acquisitions. Should I stay or should I go? This is another, certainly an event that can disrupt our lives and make us uncomfortable and potentially make some bold decisions about how we move forward. And so we're honored to have Cheryl Strowing from Paradis Lagardère, Christy Johnson, CEO of Achieve It, and Christina Kreitzer, formerly of SunTrust, now Truist, that will be speaking to us. So for everyone who is still on the webinar, well, actually, even for those that might have had to drop off, when you end the session, you will be taken immediately to a page where you can register for the next webinar, and we hope that you'll join us. Thank you so much, everyone, and we will see you again next time. Thank you, Vicki and Betsy and Wendy.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Niki.
Thank you, Niki.
Bye, y'all.